All right. Welcome to Super Gembag Wars. I'm the developer Tommy here, and I am going to give you a quick run through on how this game works. So, Super Gembag Wars is a digital card game where you survive wave after wave of enemies. The goal is to keep your life above zero for as long as possible. Once we get into a game proper, um, we'll kind of cover how all that works. But there are two things that I want to note, or one thing I want to note is if you need any of these concepts re explained to you, I have a little glossary collection here. So feel free to kind of flip through here, and you'll see a lot of these concepts that I'm going to cover written out. So let's X that out. So let's jump into how starting up a new game works. So right here, this is the deck picker, and each deck is led by a different hero. There are 5 different colors, each with their strengths and weaknesses in the game, and I tried to design a pretty good variety of decks for this initial demo here. So for today, I'm going to do Solara the Radiant, just so I can kind of show you how the mana system works. So let's click on that. And as you can see down here, it pops in everything in the deck. Then it gives you a nice little blurb about each of the faction. This is a Fire Earth deck. Fire is all about offense, right? They want to burn things. And then Earth is all about being sturdy and hardy, kind of defensive. So this is a deck that's all about having very strong but very slow creatures. So let's select this deck and jump into a game proper. So next, it takes a second for images to load sometimes. But next, this is kind of what the field looks like in the game. I have a handful of roughly 7 cards, and then in the bottom right, this is my income and resources. You start with 5 gold, and you start with 2 gold for income. You get income at the start of each of your turns, and you can play mines to increase your income. You may only play 1 mine per turn, however. So, see how I have 4 mines, 5 mines? Dang. See how I have several mines in my hand? I can only play 1 per turn. And the way that I note in the game that you can play something is I put this little kind of white aura around it. That means that that card is currently playable. So at a glance, you can kind of tell, hey, what can I do this turn? So let's go ahead and play the Emerald Mine. And notice that the Emerald Mine gives me 1 emerald right away, but also increases my income by 1 emerald as well. So now that I have that played, I can go and play this Dwarf Soldier in my hand. So let's put him down. To do that, you just got to double click, and boom, there you go. You get a smaller version of the card, but if you ever need to remember what it does, you can mouse over it, and the soldier, the full card, shows up on the left there. Now, Dwarf Soldier doesn't really have any abilities, but if a card did have abilities, that's where you would see them on kind of that left little display there. The other thing to note is that this is the turn I played the Dwarf Soldier. I cannot attack with him yet. I have to wait a whole round. I have to wait for my second turn before I can do that. So nothing else we can do, looking at our resources, but wait. I get the feeling the enemy might play some nasty creatures. So there is something we can do to make it so that we can cast this Firebolt. Firebolt there is fast, so I can play it during the enemy's turn, right? So let's pull up the market here. This gives you a lot of flexibility for multicolored decks like this one. So what I can do is I'll go and buy a ruby, which we haven't even played a mine for yet, but I can go and buy a ruby for 2 gold. Boom. And the way that the market works is gold is kind of the main currency that you use here, and you can buy and sell gems as you need them. In particular, say I had some way of getting one of these other gems, that aren't useful to this deck, but they're not useless, right? I can actually just go and sell them and get a little bit extra gold. So now we have a firebolt ready to take out the enemy creature. So let's hit pass turn and see what the enemy does. Okay, all right. They played a lot of guys. So what we'll do is we'll go through, let's see. Okay, these three don't have any abilities, but this pikeman does. So the pikeman has two keyword abilities, one of which is really, really annoying to deal with. But you can tell what these abilities do based off of this little mouse over window here. So let's go ahead and I don't like that pikeman. So let's go ahead and firebolt it. Notice the shield right there, that's his hit points, is 3. The bolt deals 3 damage, and it should just kill the pikeman right away. Boom. Okay, that's one less creature to worry about. Next, let's have my creature block. I think the squire is what makes sense here. And then I'll explain to you how combat works. So my dwarf soldier is a 3/3/3, and he'll block the squire, who is a 3/2/2. What do each of these stats do? So the first stat is their attack, how much damage they deal. The second stat is their hit points, how much damage can they take before dying. But then, and this is where a little different from other games, we have the speed stat. So how does this work? So say you're blocking a creature, whoever has the higher speed attacks first. And in the case of both creatures having the same speed stat, they hit each other simultaneously. So looking at this, I'm blocking the squire. The squire only has 2 speed versus my 3. So I'm going to attack and kill that squire first. And as you can see, flipping through the combat phases, the squire is now dead at -1 HP. But I did take damage off of these other 2 creatures here. So how unblocked creatures work is they will first damage and destroy your wall. Once the wall is gone, they will start damaging your life. So what's the difference between the wall and your life? The wall gets rebuilt at the start of each wave, whereas your life stays persistent between each wave. So you can afford to get your wall beat up a little bit, but not so much your life. So let's hit next phase and do our next turn. All right, cool. So it's a new turn. And oh geez, we just have mines. Okay. Let's play the Ruby Emerald mine. So this is a multicolor mine, and how this works is this doesn't give anything to your resource pile, but does increase your income. So let's double click on that, and boom, now my income is up by quite a bit. The other thing to note is I can now attack with my dwarf soldier. And the way that works is I just hit the attack button and hit run attack over here. But I kind of want to leave him up to defend me, so I'm going to hit cancel attack. But the way that the enemy deck works, actually, let's go ahead and have him attack. The way that the enemy deck works is first you got to destroy their wall, and once you've done that, you start attacking their deck directly. The way that that works is if my dwarf soldier deals 3 damage to their deck, they discard 3 cards off of their deck. And your goal to survive each wave is to get that deck down to 0. You can either do this via attacking or just kind of trying to wait them out. Depends on, what's in your hand and what deck you're playing. So let's hit cancel attack because I need them up for defenses. Next, there's one other thing I want to mention on this screen. We have the hero. Solara, unfortunately, I can't afford to play her. But essentially, how the hero works is they have their own special hero zone. And you can double click, if you can afford them, and play down the hero. And these usually have bigger, splashier effects. and each of the decks are built around them. If a hero dies, they go back to the hero zone, and their cost is increased by 1 gold. That way, it kind of encourages you to keep your hero alive, but if something does happen, it's not the end of the world. So cool. That's about what I wanted to run over for the combat screen. Next, let me show you how the reward system works. So right here, this is atypical of how it's going to work in the release version, but I have debug and get rewards. Both of these are just sort of testing features. But get rewards does the same thing as, right, you winning the round. So I'm going to hit get rewards, and this will take us to this other screen here. This screen will allow us to pick new cards as well as relics. So let's grab a new card, and I'll explain relics once they show up. So 1 more mine per turn sounds good, but Battle Dwarf is pretty tanky. Let's grab the Battle Dwarf. So next, this will show us our relics. And several of these have placeholder images. I need to still draw that art. But essentially the way relics work is they have a passive ability that's pretty much always active for you. And to tell what a relic does, you can just mouse over it and read the little blurb for it. So I have the repair kit, which repairs my wall, the war banner, which increases my creature's stats, and then Heart of the Forest, which increases their HP. Let's go for that HP increase. So I picked one without a picture, but each of your relics will show up in the top left corner. Let's grab the Swarm Amulet, and you should hopefully see an example of that. And between each round, by the way, you get 3 rewards, and it's going to be a mix of cards and relics. So the Swarm Amulet is pretty useful, gives me a 1/1 spider at the start of each turn. That allows me to kind of throw them in front of things, and or I always just have a creature up. So next, it is the start of my main phase. One thing to note is that to prevent you from overwhelming the enemy before they have a chance to play anything, creatures cannot attack on the first round of combat. So the other thing to notice is we did get that Heart of the Forest. Right here, my Dwarf Soldier has 2 extra HP. To show that something's been increased, I have I set the color to green there. If it's decreased, I set it to red. So let's hit pass turn, hit OK, and boom, several more enemies come out, and oh, they also hit a spell of theirs. Since the Horde can't really make decisions, they'll just do any decisions as randomly as possible. In terms of find loot, that just lets them draw 2 cards. And when the Horde draws cards, they essentially play them right away. The other thing to note is, right, notice the Squire and the Pikeman's attack are both in green. That means that they have been increased. And that's one way that I increase the difficulty between each wave. I'll increase their stats, give them keywords, or do other interesting stuff. But the idea is that you want to ratchet up the difficulty every wave. So that's about what I wanted to cover with the game. Let me know any feedback, questions, or anything that you have. And thank you for sitting through this, and hope to hear from y'all soon.